course, Cashman didn't intend...
Good morning.
He didn't intend to kill Olivia Pratt-Korbel. Just to be clear about this crime, she was caught in the crossfire, but he intended to kill somebody.
Yes, and that somebody was Joseph Nee, who he shot a number of times before his gun jammed. And then as he reached for the second weapon, that allowed Nee to scramble to his feet and then run to Olivia's house, tragically. And of course, we know that Olivia's mum had opened the front door to see what was going on. Cashman continued his pursuit of Nee and, of course, fired at and through the door, tragically hitting Cheryl and then fatally wounding precious, dear, innocent 9-year-old child, Olivia. Now, had it have been Cashman's intention to kill a child, then he would have received a whole life term. But the judge wasn't able to impose that because it was his intent to kill Joseph Nee. But she gave him just about as stiff a punishment as she could, that life imprisonment, with a minimum of 42 years behind bars.
Peter, what do you make of the fact this ghastly reprobate, this sick killer, was allowed to languish in a cell below the courts and refused to go into court to hear the witness statement from Olivia's broken-hearted mother and to hear the judge to... Shouldn't the law... They keep telling us they're going to change the law. The Justice Secretary, Dominic Raab, has said so. How difficult is it? There'd be a consensus across Parliament for it to happen tomorrow.
Yes, there would, and this case comes hot on the heels of that hideous killer of Zara Alina, who refused in such a cowardly way to enter the court, face the music and hear their sentence. And this piece of vermin Cashman proved that he is equally as cowardly as that monster by doing exactly the same. Yes, I think a murderer should stand in court, should hear the victim impact statements, and should most definitely hear the sentencing of the judge. And I think we might see legislation in coming months which will force them to do that. But I will, of course, have some thoughts for the prison staff who may have to go into a cell armed with shields, protective equipment, and forcibly restrain, handcuff, almost straitjacket these kind of murderers, and then physically manhandle them up into the courts, where, of course, they might even need to be gagged. Now, you can imagine how the human rights lawyers will jump on that bandwagon.
Say, Peter, is that where this particular, I guess, it's a sort of a loophole, really, in the justice process, or why this condition is allowed for criminals to not have to sit in the court? What's the logic behind it?
I think it's just perhaps an oversight. In previous years, defendants would have taken it as being the norm that they should go into court. There's never really been a matter of it being debated. But now, of course, with these two very prominent and recent cases, it is undoubtedly very much in the media, and therefore it's come to the attention of the politicians. And I think there's a public outcry, and I think that's absolutely justified. If you're brave enough to take a gun onto the streets, and I put the word brave in inverted commas, what I really should have said was stupid and reckless. If you're stupid and reckless to take a gun onto the streets, then you should have enough courage to climb the steps, stand in front of the learned judge and listen to the music.
We, according to The Sun yesterday, Peter, you'd have read the story. We talked about it on the programme yesterday. There is a £250,000 bounty on his head from members of the drugs gangs that he's worked with because they're worried he may start talking about naming names. How difficult is that going to be for the authorities to protect him? Because a lot of people watching and listening will think, we don't want him protected, thank you very much.
Once again, my thoughts go out to the courageous men and women of the prison service who will have to cage and supervise this monster for 42 years. Word on the street of Liverpool, and I've spent a lot of time in Liverpool in the last 4 years in particular, suggests that Cashman is responsible for other serious crimes. And of course, he's been cemented into criminality in that otherwise great city for a number of years. We heard he had previous criminal convictions. So he will be caged and the authorities will have to be very careful, and so will I in what I say, but they'll have to be very careful as to who they put him into a cell with, for example, if he does ever share a cell. Because there are other unsolved murders, for example, in Liverpool, of men that have been involved in the drug dealing criminality. And unfortunately, these murderous kind of events just keep going and going and reoccurring. Now, with women and children, sometimes tragically getting caught in the crossfire. And this is going to happen for as long as we leave the fourth biggest industry on the planet, which is the illegal drugs industry. As long as we leave that industry entirely in the hands of unscrupulous criminals, villains, gangsters, then there is going to be no end to this bloodshed. And sadly, Olivia's tragic death will have been in vain.
I just can ask you, are you suggesting some form of legalisation, Peter, or decriminalisation?
I never use the word legalisation without the word regulation.
Right.
The industry needs to be regulated, and yes, legalisation is a byproduct of that. Please don't think for one moment that I'm some hippie, drug-smoking kind of character.
I don't think anybody would think that, Peter.
I don't condone drug taking in any way, shape or form. In fact, whilst I've had my dalliances long time ago in the past, I tend to find that those people on drugs who think they are the most interesting person in the room invariably turn out to be the most boring person in the room. But the fact of the matter is, it's a supply and demand industry. The demand is not going away. Millions of people are taking drugs, holding down jobs, raising decent families. And as long as there's demand, there will be the supply. And it's all in the hands of criminals, which is utter, abject lunacy.
Yeah, it's a very, very interesting argument. No doubt we will have that debate another day. Peter Bleksley, former Met Police officer there. I was just working out, he'll be 76 when if he gets out.
Yeah,
Cashman.
if he
I
gets
can't
out.
imagine him
But
lasting
there'll
that
be a
long.
parole hearing, just like there was for John Warboys, who was the black cab taxi rapist, and it was only when other women came forward and crowdfunded that they stopped him coming out, and then he's been given another 20 years. So I'm not convinced. And actually, I've never quite understood, Bev, when they say life, it doesn't mean life.
No, absolutely.
And is there any worse